Good evening, and welcome to the Judicial Candidates Forum presented by Lewis A. Martinet Legal Society, Greater Baton Rouge chapter, as well as the local chapter of the NAACP. I have here with me Mr. Deli Adebamaji, and soon to join us, we will have Mr. William Jordan. Deli, can you hear me?
Absolutely. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. William, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, April. Thank you.
Okay. It's going to be a little difficult for me to call you candidate Adebamaji and candidate Jordan because you both are my very close colleagues, and I'm used to calling you Deli and Will, but we'll keep it how it's meant to be. First, I would like to thank our viewers. We were delayed by a great deal due primarily to the weather and Hurricane Zeta, but also, in addition, some other technical difficulties. It wouldn't be 2020 without a few bumps in the road. So thank you for your patience. If you are viewing, please share both on your social media pages as well as through text or calls that we are live and that the forum has commenced, and we would like as many viewers to join us as possible. Even because of the delay, we do not want to be denied this opportunity to chat with these two candidates. I would also like to thank the candidates. You both have been campaigning very diligently. I've seen both of you out and about, and I know your schedules are extremely busy. So thank you so much for joining us. And especially due to the delay and the weather conditions with Hurricane Delta and this time away from your family. I mean, I cannot say it enough. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, each of you will be granted 2 minutes to give a very brief opening statement or just remarks of any kind that you would like. I'm first going to start with candidate Adebamaji, and your time begins now.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Miss Leon. Sorry, I don't know your real last name right now.
Okay.
As you know, my name is Dele Adebamiji, and as you can tell from my accent, I'm originally born in Nigeria, and I was raised in Nigeria, but I started living in this community like about 38 years ago. And I intend to say that after I got to this community, I was originally in London, England, before I came to Baton Rouge. And in London, England, I studied journalism, and I got to Baton Rouge. I went to Southern University, where I received my bachelor's degree in broadcasting, my master's degree in mass communication. I also studied journalism, which is my original degree. And I also got my law degree from Southern University Law Center. So I can tell you categorically that I'm a living Southernite. I'm Southern to the bone. I'm a Jaguar from the Jaguar Nation. And for that education, I can stand it against anybody in this world with my intelligence and the education I received from Southern. I've been in this community for over 38 years. I have 5 children, 4 girls, 1 boy. The boy is no longer, but the 4 girls, one of whom is a teacher, one of whom is a medical doctor, one of whom is an industrial engineer, and the 4th one is at LSU studying biochem. I think this I've done well, and this community have been good to me. I worked in legal aid for quite a while, representing indigent defendants in child support, custody, divorces, and bankruptcy. You name it, in all those categories, I've done it. And since then, I started my private practice in 1995. I've practiced in federal court, I've practiced in state court, and in city court, I've also practiced in city court. I was an arbitrator for city court for over 4 years, arbitrating cases for the city court. So, quasi judicial experience, I do have it. And I've been involved in the community for quite a while. Through our organization, United Nigerian Organization, we've been to schools where we talk to kids about our culture, our custom, our food, all those things that make us Africans and they make us unique. And I believe that I will be a bridge builder. I've represented people in district courts, in federal courts, in city courts, and in state courts, most especially in criminal cases and other cases. I think those the fact that I know majority side of the law helps me to be a better judge in every circumstances I would want to be. And above all, my number one thing that pushes me, that really rides me, is my faith, because I stoutly believe in God. I believe if you have faith, you will know how to administer justice. If you have faith, nobody can offend you, and you always keep friends. So I believe all these things put together have made me one of the best candidates for this district at this time.
Thank you, candidate Adebamaji, for those remarks. Candidate Jordan, your 2 minutes start now. We can't hear you.
I want to make sure that we get equal time because I'm counting. Well, anyway, I got a clock up ahead of me, so I'm just watching. I just want to make sure. But first, thank you for
candidate Adebamaji went over a little bit. It's equal time. Candidate Jordan,
all right. I just want to
we
make
have worked
sure.
side by
Thank you.
side. I know how you both can go on, but that's just a little humor to lighten things up a little bit. But no, go ahead.
Appreciate it. All right, thank you. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this forum. Louis A. Martinet, I hold dear to my heart being an active member for as long as I can recall, even when we were having a rough patch even through the organization, as well as the NAACP. Thank you for hosting this forum as well. Who is Will Jordan, right? I've been asked this question, and I've been answering this question this entire campaign, and it's always refreshing to be able to give people an inside look at who you are. And yeah, I'm a candidate for Division D. My number is 74 on the ballot. Who Will is a kid who actually took on so much responsibility at a younger age. He believed that it was necessary to actually live a life of faith and do the right thing. I'm a person that understands that it is a series of choices that we all make that actually determine the next steps that we take in our lives. That at the end of the day, it's not necessarily that you have a bad person or even a good person. It's just the choices that you make. One choice can actually lead you down one road, then another one can lead you somewhere else. I started getting those lessons at a young age. I worked with my father, actually making sure that I had a different or the proper set of values, understanding what it took and what it meant. Getting up on those Saturday mornings when clothes need to be washed, you better get up and wash some of these clothes. You need to get up and actually do the things around the house. When I talk about playing football at McMain, when I talk about playing football at Millsaps, when I talk about leaving those things behind and then going to law school at Southern, you end up with a person who has a number of different life experiences. Even before that, the different work experiences. I don't necessarily talk about my work experience so much because, yeah, everybody knows that I have the trial experience and the motion practice and the evidentiary hearing experience. Sure. But what you get with Will Jordan is you take all of those things from the personal side, and then you couple that with my professional experiences in my leadership roles and my ability to be able to communicate, my ability to be able to actually meet people where they are. I don't just live in a community per se. I don't just exist in a community per se. I actually work to make sure that I affect people's lives. And that's who Will Jordan is. It's a person who, no matter where he is, no matter where he goes, he has a servant attitude, which I'm very, very proud of the fact that I have that, and that all I do is give of myself, and I affect so many people's lives in so many different ways. And I've done that since I've been in Baton Rouge. With starting the Real Talk About the Law program, where we go into the area high schools and actually give that information to those students dealing with interactions with different law enforcement, et cetera. With the Community Police Ambassador Training Program, again, giving that information back to the community, and so many various other options and programs that we've started here in East Baton Rouge, all the way taking that position and those leadership positions that I've had in going to Washington, D.C. to help effectuate real change in criminal justice reform. I've been an advocate for criminal justice reform. I've been a practitioner who has always fought for victims' rights. So what you get with Will Jordan, you get an open book. I'm very happy to, again, be here. I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd. And again, I'm ready to begin.
Thank you, candidate Jordan. And I'm ready to begin as well. We will go through a series of questions. We will alternate who will respond first and go back and forth. After every question, the other candidate will have an opportunity to briefly respond in whatever way, to agree, disagree, piggyback, carry on, etc. Also, at the end of the program, it's 7:05 right now. We're going to go ahead until 7:50. And then at the end of the program, you both will have another opportunity to give some closing remarks. And also, I would like you to include to our viewers what the district is that covers your campaign. If I'm doing a bad job of asking that question, but I think you both understand. Candidate Jordan, are you ready? Because the first question is going to go to you. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, sir. The COVID crisis caused court systems nationwide to pivot and proceed in new ways. What methods do you have in mind for improving court procedures and efficiency within the 19th JDC? What other methods would you suggest?
Okay. That's a
And
great
I'm
question.
sorry, Candidate Jordan, if you could kind of keep your responses to that same 2 to 3 minute
Sure.
window.
No
Thank you,
problem
sir.
at all. Yeah, actually, that's a great question. I'm happy that you asked that one too. One of the things that I'm actually looking to continue to work on is bringing a different set of efficiency or a different standard of efficiency to the court without losing what justice is. And we're talking about civil side, we're talking about criminal side, we're talking about both. I've been talking to the civil attorneys about it as well, because just like you said, what COVID has done is COVID has not only just stacked up the criminal dockets, it's also stacked up the civil dockets, right? Things just aren't moving. A couple of the things that we've actually discussed, obviously what 2020 has done in general is it's pushed us forward to accept certain things that we were actually looking at possibly in the next 4 years. Well, now we've actually just brought them on a little bit faster. At the district attorney's office for itself, for example, they were slowly moving to the pace of trying to get to more of an electronic system altogether. Well, this is kind of actually fast forwarding that system as well. When we talk about Zoom court, when you talk about, this platform, when we talk about Teams, when we're talking about all of the different technologies and the advances that have actually come, what I would like to do is actually explore how we can actually use it to our advantage even more so, right? We're there, but we're not quite pushing it to where it needs to be, because of course, I understand that things are still getting left behind. We're still having issues with getting people transported. And even if they're not physically being brought into where they need to be, even making sure that the Zoom contact is there. I understand other difficulties. If you have court that's supposed to start at 9 o'clock and you have people on Zoom, what are you going to do? You're going to have them on Zoom for 7 hours, because the court process is moving as slow as it is. So basically what I'm doing is, or what I'm trying to do is, I'm actually still going into the process of going into all of my connections, which I speak about often, right? When we talk about best practices. In fact, I had the occasion to be on a Zoom call maybe about 2 months ago when the discussion was brought up talking about Sixth Amendment rights in the relation, or as it regarded to bail reform issues, right? And of course, this is from a number of different practitioners from all across the country. We were talking about South Carolina, we were talking about Ohio, we were talking about Seattle, and what they're actually facing and what that actually looks like, right? And it's not just in sending out the jury subpoenas and who is responding, it's trying to make sure, again, that what you do get is a proper sample size of the population, so that what you're getting is actually what true justice is. So to answer your question again, I'm going to be looking at what are the best practices as far as using technology. When we're talking about sending the notice to individuals, sending notices to individuals, I know that there's been some talk about sending the text messages as well. I'm open to those things to see if we can actually get the process going. And most importantly, I'm open to actually moving the attorneys to make sure that we're actually getting things done. On days when things are set for status, it's not to get together and say what we still need to do. We already had those things worked out. So when we're coming in, we're actually moving it along. We're having that discussion and we're actually making substantive progress as we are there. I think once we get those things figured out and once we actually get to work, because we also have to understand COVID has knocked everybody off of their schedule. I'm coming in, I'm going to be a judge that's ready to work. I'm going to be there from day one. We're going to be there early and we're going to be there as late as we need to go. But again, we're going to be doing it with a heart and a mind for service to make sure that the people understand and that we're looking at it to make sure that we're not disassociating, actually losing trust and faith in the justice system, be it criminal or civil or however you want to look at it.
Thank you, Candidate Jordan. Candidate Adebamaji, please respond with any comments, whether you agree, disagree, or would like to carry on in a similar fashion.
Thank you, Ms. Leon or Ms. Johnson. Really, I'm not going to try to disagree or agree with what Mr. Jordan is saying. I'm just going to like to talk about my own self and what I would like to see during the COVID period. And I'm going to try very hard to keep it to the 2 minutes required of me. Look, I believe the COVID issue just opened our eyes in the district court and in the city court and other courts to see that the federal court has been ahead of us. I've been practicing in federal court for almost 27 years. And in federal court for the past 5 or 6 years, we've always dealt with all these things by e-filing, argument over the telephone, that by the time you can even start a case and don't see the judge until you have a trial in federal court. So COVID hasn't done too much damage to us. COVID has only told us that, hey, look, guys, you're behind the 8 ball. So what district court has to do is catch up with what federal court is already doing. That's where the experience comes in. So for people like me, it will not be anything new to try case. If I think even during this COVID period, I tried a case with Judge Kelly, and we started like about 12 or 1 o'clock. We didn't finish until about 6 o'clock. We presented evidence, we tried the case, we made the argument, we made the introduction, witnesses were called. I thought district court has improved. But for me, I know there will be some backlog because of COVID issue. That's certain, that's given. Now, what is required of us to catch up with that backlog? For me, hard work has never been a problem for me. I work in legal aid for quite a while, and I know what it is when you work in legal aid for all those clients you represent, because they do not have money. So you have to represent indigent clients. I work from 6:30 in the morning till about 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. Legal aid knows that. So what it would demand for a new judge to come in would be hard work. But in COVID issue, I think we already have the system going on right now in district court. All people just have to do is get used to all this technology issue coming on. I might be old school, but I've been taught new ways. And the federal court has prepared me very well for me to be able to handle those COVID issues in this particular time.
Thank you, Candidate Adebamaji. I'm going to pose the second question to you, okay? And you will have the first opportunity to respond. Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Violent crime, particularly with our youth, is perceived to be increasing. What role, if any, do you believe is the appropriate role for the judiciary in addressing violent crime?
Personally, I believe that violent crime issues should not be limited into the courtroom alone. I think if you're a judge, you should have the ability to go into the community where this violent crime is coming on. And you should have the ability to be able to call the elders, the leaders of the community, and have them to sit down with the people and decide and say what can be done to lessen this kind of violent crimes. I know it's not possible to stop violent crime completely, but I believe that the level of violent crime can be brought down. If you're a district judge, if you're a judge, you just can't sit in the courtroom and say, I only deal with them when they come before me. You should have the ability to go into the community. If you know that's the community you serve. Like right now, I think there's a violent crime issue going on in 70805, where the chief of police, the sheriff, the city constable, and the crime stopper, Johnny Majors, they all come together and talk to the community and the pastors to see what they can do to lower violent crime. And why are they doing that? They're doing that because they know that the court system alone cannot solve all that problem. If you're waiting for the court system alone to solve all that problem, you won't get anywhere. So what you will need is, you as a judge, you will have to go into that community. You have to talk to people You got to let people know that they can touch you. You got to let people know that they can talk to you. And you got to let people know that you're concerned about the violent crime going on in their community. So I believe those are the ways we can work to get those violent crime down a little bit.
Thank you, candidate Adebamaji. Candidate Jordan, your opportunity to respond.
Sure. And I'll say this, when we're talking about the youth violent crime spike, right? I think it's important to actually think about and understand, well, what are some of these factors? Because we can go through history and you understand that it's always been some type of a reframe when we're talking about rebellious youth, right? At a certain age period, you can go all the way back to the 50s, right? This is just kind of what ends up happening. But there's a difference or whatever when you start talking about what is just a little bit of rambunctious behavior and then what is actually where you got a situation where kids are riding by shooting up a house, right? And where any innocent bystander can end up being struck based off of some of these bullets flying off of whatever the foolishness that's happening. What I like to say about that is I think I have a very unique perspective as far as all of this is concerned. It's one thing to be able to, yes, say, well, you have to walk into the communities. You have to be able to understand what's happening with a lot of these youth and see it. It's another thing to actually do it, right? I am a firm believer that, yes, there's not one actor in any of this that's going to be able to just take the reins and actually get everything changed overnight. But I am a staunch believer that if we actually take just the extra steps that we are capable of doing, and if we put those tools that we have to good use, then we can get a lot of stuff done. What do I mean by that? Everybody right now knows that part of the problems that we're having right now in Baton Rouge is we've got one set of or an active set of participants in one group or organization that are actively beefing with another set of one group or another organization. And then you have another group and another group and another group, right? You've got all of these young people that are actually acting out because they want to make it. They're trying to make it. And they think whether it's rapping, whether it's putting on, whatever the case may be, they're thinking that this is the way to actually get out. To be able to address some of these issues, it's not just simply saying, well, you got to get jobs, you got to get education. No, it's not that simple. We also have to address underlying issues that actually bring forth and cause criminality to begin with. And while lack of education is one thing, and while lack of employment is one thing, it also has to start with other issues. And we have to look at just home surroundings. We actually have to look at what's going on in the neighborhoods. We have to actually look at what trauma has been put upon some of these individuals, that this is the only way that they're able to actually manifest the way that they're actually going to move forward in life. So understanding that, being able to speak the same language that they're talking about. I'm talking about the slang, understanding that, being able to go on YouTube and understand, all right, now I can go right here now and I can see a history of beef for 6 months right here myself and actually understand who it is, why you beefing with this one and who's beefing with that one, knowing the exact language that they're talking about, knowing the exact terms that they're talking about, and then be able to actually kind of, not with the sledgehammer, but with the scalpel, be able to take some of this animosity, this manner, this issue right here, and be able to set this aside. And now we can address the issues as we need to. I think at this point, I am uniquely qualified. Because I don't just talk it, I actually do walk it. And I am in those same neighborhoods. I am talking to those same youth. And I've been doing it since I've been here.
Thank you, candidate Jordan. The next question will direct our attention to nonviolent crime, and it goes to you, candidate Jordan. Are you prepared? Other than incarceration, what alternative means, if any, do you have in mind for addressing nonviolent crime? And you can respond. Please, both candidates adhere to 2 to 3 minutes in your responses. Candidate Jordan, you can go first.
Sure. Well, first of all, I am open to whatever the code and the law allows me to be able to use, right? I think that using alternatives to prison first and foremost is an absolute must, right? You absolutely want to look at those alternatives, because when you look at the raw data, right, when you look at the numbers alone, and you realize when we're looking at the numbers of people that are actually incarcerated, when we're looking at what's going on per capita in our state, it's just ridiculous, and it doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't matter if you're red or blue, whatever your political leanings are, you realize that at some point in time, you're over policing certain things, and you're actually putting yourself in a situation where what ends up happening, your bottom line, be it human capital, or if those other folks that are talking about dollars, either way is being affected, because we don't have actual productive taxpaying citizens. So, of course, what I want to look at is whatever alternatives to incarceration are available for certain crimes. Of course, that's also up to the legislature, because they need to make sure that the judge's hands aren't necessarily tied, because oftentimes they are. And sometimes you're just looking at certain instances of probation versus incarceration. Now, what I actually think, though, that we can do is we can better utilize and better affect what we're actually doing on probation. I think that, or what we can do is we can actually have better pre-trial services, to where we're actually looking at getting people the same effects of actually getting some rehabilitation services. We're actually getting some reformative services, and we're actually getting better education services through our probation and parole, better mental health services, et cetera, where we can actually work on some of these things beforehand. If we can work on that, also using whatever alternatives to incarceration that are available, I think that we will actually see a better result in the end. It's not necessarily that we have what they like to call gateway drugs or gateway crimes, right? It's not necessarily that. It's because we never address the underlying issue to begin with. So whether the answer is alternative to incarceration, or be it some type of helps and services, that's what I plan on focusing on from day one, regardless of what's there or what's not.
Thank you, Candidate Jordan. Candidate Adebamaji, please respond. Your time starts now. Don't forget to unmute yourself. There you go.
I thought you okay.
No problem.
I thought normally you mute me and you unmute me. Now you're giving me that job. Okay.
We're winging it, Candidate Adebamaji. But
That's all right. That's all right.
Thank you both for muting each other, while the other is speaking. I appreciate that. But go ahead. Your time starts now.
Okay. Look, I've been doing this for 28 years. I hate to keep saying I've been doing it for 28 years. And the reason I'm saying that is because, believe me, honestly, I've seen a lot. I will tell you just a simple example of my two opposite clients I represented. I represented a client one time who I believe must have some mental issue, but I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can tell the judge, say, this guy has a mental issue. But the judge was going to put him on probation. And I told the judge, I said, look, you can't put this guy on probation, because he's going to come right back. Even though his crime is a crime, it was a non-violent crime, but I can see that he was going to come right back. And the judge did put him on probation, but he came right back. That's one. He has a mental problem that need to be attended to. So because of that, he became a criminal. And the second one is, I was campaigning last week. I met a young guy. He said, Mr. Adebamaji, you don't recognize me. And I said, no. He said, I took a gun to school one time ago, and you represented me. He said, you fought to get me on probation. He said, but now I'm a certified plumber. That made me happy. That made me feel good, because I told him that I saw some good in him. And now here he is telling me what he is, which means that, second chances can work for non-violent offenders. Not all of them has to be locked up. These people are smart. You just have to give them incentive to see that, okay, you have the ability to lock yourself up, or you have the ability to stay out. So non-violent offenders can be given a second chance. I think the code kind of allows judges to be able to do that. Even though the legislature says some things, but they never say that discretion cannot be used when you're adjudicating a case. A judge should look at a person, see what kind of background that person has, and see what kind of things that person is going through, especially if he has a job before he was arrested for a non-violent crime. Because for a non-violent crime, if you give them second chances, believe me, honestly, they will surprise you. These people are not by any means dumb, and they're not by any means lacking knowledge. Some of them need direction. They say it takes a village to raise a child. The courtroom is one of those villages to raise that child. So I believe non-violent offenders should be given second chances, and I believe non-violent offenders should not be locked up just because they committed a crime.
Thank you, candidate Adebamaji. Let's check in really quickly. We're almost halfway through. I have two other questions, again, both alternating between candidates, and they will address two very important things as a practitioner, at least I believe, that substantially affect our community, as well as the criminal bar and the prosecutorial bar. And that's talking about setting bonds and sentencing of adjudicated offenders. The first question goes to candidate Adebamaji, correct? I'm not incorrect in saying that, right?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Making sure. Candidate Adebamaji, the first question goes to you. What criteria would you use for setting bond amounts for defendants? What would be your primary considerations? Would you require conditions for persons out on bond? Your time starts now.
Well, if my understanding serves me right, I think your question is a two-part question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What would I consider first to set bond, and what would I consider for somebody who is already on bond? Now, if it's for the first time person that I'm setting bond on, I think, to me personally, my first thing I will look at is your criminal history. It's very essential because I don't know you. One of the ways I'm going to know you is your criminal background. I want to see what kind of crimes you've been charged with before. I want to see if you haven't been charged with any crime. That will give me the that will give me the opportunity to determine if this person is somebody that I can let loose to the society. Because you got to remember, before you set a bond on somebody, you got to make sure you're not releasing that person to go back into the society and do something that the society will regret, or you as a judge will regret. I will look at number one, if you don't have any criminal record. Number two, were you gainfully employed, or are you a full-time student when the incident happened? Number three, what kind of crime are you being charged with? Is it a violent crime or is it a non-violent crime? And number four, if the opportunity is there, I want to see what kind of background you have. Those will be the criteria I will use. There's no one glove fits all when you're setting a bond. Some things may show up that will tell you that, okay, this guy doesn't need to be released on bond, or you should set the bond in a way that is high enough. But if it was somebody who's already been on bond and then you commit another crime, I think that will change my perspective of how we set the bond. I will still look at the kind of crime you committed that put you, that got you to be on bond in the first place. Then I will see how far apart was the first bond to this second bond. Number three, I want to see what kind of changes have you made in your life since the first bond to the second bond. All those will be criteria I will consider for setting the second bond. But even if I will set a second bond, I wouldn't mind having a monitor, somebody to monitor your movement at least for the first 90 days, for me to make sure that the society is safe from you. Because they say the first time is a mistake, the second time may be an error, the third time is it's not a mistake, it's not an error. That has become a habit. So for me, those would be the criteria I will look at before I set a bond.
Thank you, candidate Adebamaji. Candidate Jordan, your time starts now.
Sure. First, I got to get right into this one. I'm not a huge fan of bond monitoring companies, right? And the biggest reason why I'm not is because they disproportionately affect the poor people, right? It's one thing when you have them set up, if you have a bond set and then people they're able to make that bond and then they actually post a bail and now they're out. What ends up happening after that, if you actually impose a bond monitoring company, well, now they actually have to pay that bond monitor for their services. I know in Orleans Parish, it was a little different. There were no bond monitoring companies. It was just the sheriff, right? And that's who was monitoring you. So again, having that background and understanding it and being able to see it firsthand and seeing how it's disproportionately affecting poor people, that's one of the things, and that's one of the reasons why I'm paused and I have caution whenever I'm asked about that. Now, does that mean that I'll never, under any circumstance, ever use a bond monitoring company once I'm elected? Well, no, I never speak in absolutes, right? You never know what can actually happen, but I just want you to be aware that I am aware of those potential issues. When we talk about the factors in setting a bond, it's really easy. It's listed in the code right now. Every judge is supposed to look at those factors when setting the bond. It's about 10 factors. It's around 330, 332, 330, right around there in the actual code, right? The main factors that everyone wants to talk about is propensity to reoffend, because that's what you want to look at. You want to look at, is that person a danger to himself or others? You want to look at the nature of the offense. You want to look at the actual evidence that's actually against the person as well. And it's hard to do that when you're actually looking at just a simple APC. It's funny when we're talking about the federal experience so much, right? I would think that at this point, it seems like it's almost a given when you actually look at the federal system and what they do. You're a danger or you're not a danger. You're either going to be out or you're not going to be out, right? And I almost think it's one of those issues. And when I talk about best practices, I look at what they've been doing in New Jersey, how they've actually done this and actually went to the system of having a no cash bail system. And these are things that obviously what the law says is one thing, but using the discretion of the court, that's another. And one of the issues that, and I mentioned those factors earlier, I'm extremely focused, and I want to know about the propensity to reoffend, the dangerousness to themselves or others. And then also, again, is this person even qualified for a bond? Because we also know that based on the offense that you're doing, you may not even be qualified for either a personal surety, a sign out, which everybody always asks for, a property bond, et cetera, whatever the case may be, or even a bond in and of itself, based on the nature of the offense, if it's a capital crime. So understanding the law is key, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to set somebody down the road of unintended consequences where you end up hurting them more than actually what you intended to do in the first place. So to answer your question, I am extremely going to be looking at, of course, violent offenses, whether or not someone has a propensity to reoffend, danger to themselves or others. But I mean, I'm looking at it just like, I mean, it's a common sense issue here, right? What we want to do is we want to cut back on criminality. And while people always like to say, well, it's just to make sure that they come to court, what I don't want to see happen is that bond ends up being used as a poor people pretrial tax to make sure that a prosecutor or somebody is going to be able to just use that as a way to get a conviction.
Thank you, Candidate Jordan. And the next question goes to you, and it's similar in nature, but in regards to sentencing. What criteria would you use for deciding how an adjudicated offender should be sentenced? And we're going to really stick to the 2 minutes because I have some other really personal questions that I want to get into that really aren't so much focused on the practice of law, but more on the candidates. So we're almost wrapping up that segment. So again, I'll ask you one more time. What criteria would you use for deciding how an adjudicated offender should be sentenced? And your time starts now.
Well, thank you. I love that question too. I'm going to actually really make sure that I get into your 2 minutes on this one, and I want to use every second of it because I know I'm gonna need it. I had the personal pleasure of actually operating and practicing the very first courtroom that I was in as a section chief. That was in Julian Parker's courtroom in New Orleans. He was one of the best judges that I think I've ever had the privilege of practicing in front of. The man knew the law frontwards and backwards. One of the things that I actually learned from him when you're actually sentencing somebody, because the guy, he could actually do it basically just looking at the facts of the case, and he knew what he wanted to do and how he wanted to do it. But when he actually, I actually learned from him, it was also best practice to try to get a PSI, get you a pre-sentence investigation. Make sure that you're covering your bases. That way, if you're going whatever number that you're thinking, you are actually going to be covered, and you will have your reasons if and when anything ever goes up, right? Coming here to Baton Rouge has been the same thing. I had the pleasure of practicing under Judge Bonnie Jackson's courtroom. And while I think it's very, very important that for efficiency's sake and expediency's sake, a judge is able to be able to look at certain things and know exactly what range we want to be in. What you don't want to have is if you have a defense attorney and a prosecutor coming to a judge and they're saying, Judge, we have this case where we think we have an agreement worked out, but we need your approval on a number. And then you have a judge that's only going to be hemming and hawing and saying, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what range I need to be in. I don't know if I'll accept that. A judge needs to be actively involved in what we're actually doing. And that way we can actually move things along in finding justice, especially if both parties are actually interested in finding justice and meeting it out somewhere in the middle. So that's first and foremost. But when we're talking about actually sentencing and looking for a number, of course, I'm going to look at the entire background. I'm going to look at not just a rap sheet. I'm going to ask that defense attorney to get on his job. I'm going to ask that defense attorney to find out what's going on in this guy's family life. I'm going to ask that defense attorney to get on the job and find out what was his job like? What was his education like? I want to know if this is a person that we can actually have set up to go back into society, because 98% of everybody that gets convicted and sentenced to jail time is going back into society. So the question is, how long are we looking at doing it? And then what, if anything, are we actually setting up in place to be able to help this person? And I know I'm talking fast because I'm down to like 10 seconds, but I think it's very, very, very important that we actually get all of the information when considering sentencing and what we're actually looking at. Because like I said, if somebody's going to be coming home and they don't have somewhere to live, they don't have a job, they don't have an education, then what do we do? Nothing.
We do a disservice to that offender. And I agree with that point. And I know you also have some valid points too, candidate Adebomiji. What are your points? And you can respond now. Your time begins.
Well, for me, practically, unless I know that the code already spelled out what kind of time you should give to somebody concerning every kind of crime. In any crime you commit, the code already specify what time you should commit. Now the judge has some discretions in following all those requirements that's in the code. I know you've been a prosecutor for quite a while yourself too, so you know those things. And now the PSI is what allows you to know the background of each person. Now, when you're talking about sentencing, you will have two different kinds of sentencing. You will have a felony sentencing and you have a misdemeanor sentencing. In the misdemeanor sentencing, I think judges have a lot of latitude, even though the code still says some certain things that the judge has to do. But most judges go a little bit above that by requiring the candidates to have GED or be gainfully employed, which I think is a good criteria. If my client doesn't have a GED, I tell him, I want you to go get a GED. I want to be a dad to that person I'm representing. I want to be able to set your life straight. I want you to see me tomorrow and be grateful that I helped you to achieve what you needed to achieve before. But because you didn't follow the directives in the initial stage, now you got it. Now, if we move to the felony offenses, the law is very, very clear on that. You need a PSI. And what does the PSI do? The PSI gives the judge the ability to know who the person is. It gives the judge the ability to know the person's background. It gives the judge the ability to see if there's if counseling is necessary. So PSI does a lot of things for the judge to look at. Even if we move to the federal court, in the federal court, you have the PSI also. In the PSI, in the federal court, you get points. You get 6-point system that determines how many years they're going to send you to. But in the state court, you don't have that point system. Even in federal court, that I want to say they're very rigid. But now they've moved away from being rigid, from being so rigid. The judges have allowed some discretion after the Kuhn case, and they can do things the way they see fit. So the same thing comes to district court. Yes, it's not all the time that you send everybody to jail. There are some issues that you have to give them a second chance, but you still have to follow the law because you don't want to release criminals into the society without any rehabilitation.
Thank you, candidate Adebomiji. Now, shifting gears, we're going to get a little into who you are as a candidate, as a practitioner, as a person. And I'm really looking forward to this segment, but we are reaching our time. So bear with me. But still, please answer the questions with the time limit, but to the best of your ability. Candidate Adebamaji, Louisiana has held the title of mass incarceration in the world. We in Louisiana today know that 1 in every 3 Black men will serve prison time. Do you believe it is part of the judge's ethical role to combat racial bias and discrimination in the criminal legal system? And your time starts now.
Look, I don't know who I'm going to offend, but yes, categorically, I believe that strongly. I've represented clients sometimes that I try to convince some judges, say, look, this guy does not need to be incarcerated. This guy might have made a mistake. Give him or her a second chance. Hey, sometimes we fall on deaf ears, and I've had some judges that follow my reasoning and the reason why I say that. Yeah, it's very horrible that Louisiana leads the whole world in rate of incarceration. I hate to say this, I don't want to be racist, but if you look at the population of those who are incarcerated, they're nobody but people like me, they're Black. So do I think the judicial system has failed us? Yes, it has failed us. Look, if you don't want to vote for me because I'm saying that, don't vote for me. I believe the judicial system has failed us. I believe too many Blacks are being incarcerated. I believe that you can give them opportunity, and there are other ways. That's why I believe in alternative sentencing. I believe in rehabilitation, education, more than anything else, especially if the crime is a non-violent crime. Now, don't get me wrong now. Some of us need to be in jail. Some of us need to be locked up. If you commit armed robbery, you're raping people, you're burglarizing people home, you just flat out the kind of person that not supposed to be in the society. Yeah, you need to be locked up. But all the other people like drug offenders, like non-violent crime offenders or drug addicts, jail is not the appropriate thing. If you send a drug user to jail for 2 years, he comes out, you haven't done nothing. What he will do is go back to a drug. But rather, look, I've said this continuously. I've said it times without number, and I will continue to say it. Send him to rehab and counseling. Then you will have a viable citizen.
Thank you, Candidate Adebamaji. Candidate Jordan, your time starts now to respond to the same question.
Sure. My good friend, the solicitor out of Fulton County, Georgia, Keith Gamage, he often quotes Charles Hamilton Houston when he actually says the lawyer is either a social engineer or he's a parasite on society, right? And if you actually understand and really get the message that he's actually saying there in that quote, you understand that from a lawyer to a judge, it's your duty to actually make sure that we actually start moving society forward in the right way, right? If not, you're just a drain on the system. You're taking resources, you're breathing air that you don't need to even be worried about. Some could even go as far as say, right? While there are some that will argue that it's not up to the court system to fix all of society's ills and all of society's problems. Okay, the screen just went out. We came back.
I'm back.
I do believe that. Okay, I see y'all now. Okay. We do have a job. We do have a job to actually address the issues where we can and where we see them. Once I'm elected, it's my duty to actually take those steps. The reason why is because I come from it. I've been profiled. At the same time, I see the advantages, I see the disadvantages, right? What actually comes from while Charlemagne the God he actually coined that phrase Black privilege. And some people got upset when he actually saw what that meant. But when he says or how he explained it, basically that tough skin, almost like when you talk about what it is that we have to go through as African Americans in this society, what it actually took for us to get to that point, that we have to go through so much more. Bun B says all the time, or how he said it in one of his lines when he was talking about I'm 200 yards back in a 100-yard race, right? it's one of those things that it gets old fast when you hear the stories from your mom and your grandparents when they talk about desegregating the schools, and they actually talk about, all right, now you're going to go to that white school, you have to be better than the best. You cannot afford to fail because you don't just have yourself and your own issues to worry about. You have your whole family. You have your whole neighborhood. You're representing all of us. So when you understand what that actually means to carry that actual weight, that extra weight, then you end up carrying yourself like a Thurgood Marshall. You carry yourself like a Charles Hamilton Houston. You carry yourself like a Keith Gamage. You carry yourself like a Judge Janice Clark, because you understand that you have to actually move the needle forward. And if you're not moving the needle forward, then you become a pariah, then you become a parasite on society.
Thank you, Candidate Jordan. You have the next question.
Sure.
What injustices have you witnessed inside or outside of the courtroom, and what was your response to the event? What injustices have you witnessed inside or outside of the courtroom, and what was your response to the event? And your time starts now.
Sure. I'll go with one because I only have 2 minutes. There's a whole bunch that I can list both inside and out, but I think what's apropos is going to be this one that was actually inside the court. You may remember this one. The injustice is there were two individuals that were charged with a crime in which police officers had said the felonious activity was a substantial amount of a narcotic that that police officers said that they found in the vehicle. Through the years of actually drudging this case and dragging it along, these officers would not come to court for anything. It got to the point when there was a motion filed to try to have I guess it was a evidentiary hearing regarding the basis for actually how they actually seized said evidence. And then this last officer wouldn't show up. Through all of the efforts of my office at the time to try to secure this officer's presence to make sure that these men's rights were protected, because that's what it's all about. If you did what you said you did, then it's easy to come into court and say what you said happened. Well, when those officers didn't come to court, and when I actually called this man on my own phone and he pretended that it was somebody else, right, and hung up on me, I promptly and as expeditiously as T.I. would say, I went in there and I dismissed that case, right, in the best interest of justice. Because at the end of the day, if you can't stand behind your word, your actions, and what you've done after a case that has drug on for as long as it had in this situation, and there was no rhyme or reason as to why it needed to go longer other than you had alleged that this was a bad guy, right? And then that means that it was in the best interest of justice to make sure that you need to understand that. And what I did was also let the superiors know about that information afterwards. And then that was handled in-house and how to handle that. That officer, I'd actually never seen that officer again in court, but that is a severe injustice that I cannot stand for that.
Thank you, Candidate Jordan. Candidate Anabameji, what injustices have you witnessed inside or outside of the courtroom, and what was your response to that event? Your time starts now.
Well, one of the, look, I've seen many, okay? I'm just going to pick one particularly, that I have a guy who was charged with forcible rape, and while he was in jail, he was charged again with another forcible rape. And the evidence and the facts of the case show that it wasn't possible for this guy to have committed this forcible rape. But just because the system just wanted him to plead to something, they charged him with another forcible rape. Every effort to have him released by showing say, look, this guy cannot have done this thing was in vain. Well, I had to try that case. And after the case was finished, the jury came back 12-0. That tells you that there was absolutely no facts surrounding that case. There was nothing in there to show that that guy committed that crime. The jury was 12-0. I tried the case. I couldn't plead him because I know if I pleaded him, I wouldn't be able to sleep. My conscience would kill me because that guy just didn't do anything. And what happened after he won the first case 12-0? They dismissed the second case without even trying it. All this shows you that There are injustices in courtroom, and it's left to us to see how we can approach those injustices. Maybe it's because I have an accent, but for me, I believe that injustice happens in every which way or form. Some people talk about my communication skill, or some people talk about my the fact that they don't think I can speak I speak good enough because of my accent, but I'd never let those kind of things bother me or worry me. So for me, making sure that guy was not found guilty and the jury was 12-0, I think that was one of the worst injustices I've seen. And I think that's one of the best cases I've ever tried in my life.
Thank you, candidate Adebamaji. The next question goes to you, and I have just two more. This one and another. Both should be fairly brief, and then we'll go to your closing statements, okay? Candidate Adebamaji, many persons that come to court are confused, uneducated, and sometimes it is their first contact with the criminal justice system. How do you plan to educate the persons in your courtroom, whether they are victims, offenders, or the general public? And you may respond now.
Well, my people always say, whatever you don't know is always bigger than you. So if somebody is coming into the courtroom for the first time, even me as a lawyer, before I start any case, I'm going to tell you this, you may laugh at me. I always have butterflies in my stomach. If I don't have butterflies, I know I'm in trouble. But when I have them butterflies, after a couple of jabbing and talking, it goes away. So it's not unusual for people to come into the courtroom and not realizing what they're getting into. For people coming there in the first time, that's where your temperament comes into use. You have to be able to be patient to explain to them the reason why the court is ruling against them, or the reason why the court is asking them to come there, or the reason why the court is asking them to do something. They may ask you that question 4 or 5 times. Believe me, I have those kind of clients. Those are the kind of clients I represent. So I'm used to those kind of things. And for those who are, who've been in the courtroom before, but are not certain as to why is the judge doing this, you should have the ability to be able to explain to them. Number one, you should know what the law says. Number two, you should know the interpretation of the law. Number three, you should know the application of the law also. And sometimes you draw on your experience, not only as a criminal lawyer, you draw on your experience as being practicing in family court, having practiced in bankruptcy court, having practiced in civil court. You draw on those experiences to calm your clients down. You have to educate them on what the law requires or how the courtroom operates. It's not that you won't be able to get all the affairs away, but at least you can educate them and let them know what to expect and what they think can happen in the courtroom. And for the general public, I think education is just the bottom line. We need to keep teaching the people what they can expect in law. But as you know, law is very dynamic, and you can't limit law to criminal alone. You got law, it has civil and it has criminal part of it. So for you to be able to do that, you should have a grasp, knowledge of that. Not only the knowledge, but also understanding. But I think education is number one. And I think number two, your temperament counts a lot.
Thank you, candidate Adebamaji. Candidate Jordan, your opportunity to respond. How do you plan to educate the persons in your courtroom, whether they are victims, offenders, or the general public? And candidate Adebamaji just made an excellent point, or if they're a plaintiff. Your opportunity to respond now.
Real quick, we all have to understand first and foremost, and we've all been a novice at some point in our time in some type of situation in our life. What I liken it to is back when I was pledging, when I pledged my fraternity, and then we had to actually learn how to do a certain step, right? When you actually get in there and you're learning those movements for the first time, you're very awkward, right? You get to looking around, you're trying to make sure that your count is right, you're trying to make sure that everybody is on time, and you're trying to make sure that it's together. Well, at some point in time, when you actually get more comfortable with it, you get used to it. And now I don't need to look around anymore. Now I understand what it is. That's when you know it, when you're comfortable with it. You look at young attorneys that come into court all the time, and one of the first things that they're confused with is, all right, what do I do? What am I supposed to say? Tell me how I can, and then all you got to do is you try to slide over to them and give them some type of assistance. It's one thing to actually be able to say, well, yes, we need to help educate and we need to actually be servants. It's another thing to actually do it, though. And what I mean by that is I come from a servant's background, right? I come from the background, as I said, when I was a kid in high school, being a busboy for my Aunt Shirley's catering company. I come from the background from there, working my way up at Metairie Country Club from a busboy to a waiter to the maitre d'. So I know what it means to actually serve people and actually give them the information and put myself in a position to be that servant leader, and actually really by definition of what that actually is. What I plan on doing is the staff that I actually plan on assembling, we're going to have that same attitude from the law clerk to my legal secretary, all the way down to the minute clerks. When it comes time to actually make sure that the public, because that's who we work for, it's the public's position, that seat at Division D. It's not going to be mine. It's going to be for the people. So I need to make sure that even the staff understands that we're not in this position, but for them. And we're actually going to work with that customer service attitude to make sure that you get the proper understanding of things, you understand what's happening, and that there's no loss in the translation. And when I talk about not just talking about it, but doing it and how it's easy to do that, you got to remember, I actually came up with the training program for the Community Police Ambassador program when we actually talk about the nuts and bolts of the criminal justice system, where we actually put in a module for implicit bias, when we actually put in a module talking about what it actually means, certain language, because if we're speaking different languages, it's like you speaking French and I'm speaking Chinese. We can't communicate. But if we can actually give people the proper skills, which I've been doing already, and which I will continue to do when I'm elected, I think that we'll actually be in a much better situation. But absolutely, you have to be able to take the time with those individuals. You have to be able to take the time with the plaintiffs. You have to be able to take the time with the different lawyers. You have to be able to take the time with the different witnesses and victims' families, et cetera, and the defendants. And they need to be able to make sure that everybody understands, because lost in translation is not just a movie. It happens every single day in court here in East Baton Rouge.
Thank you, Candidate Jordan. And you actually touched on a few things that is an excellent segue into the last and final question before your closing remarks. You are no longer, well, let me say it like this. If elected, either one of you no longer would be an advocate for justice, but a judge. How would you deal with persons who do not adequately advocate for their client? Also, in a separate question, how will you work with newly admitted attorneys that enter your courtroom to make sure that they are properly advocating for their client, whether it be a plaintiff, defendant, the state, insofar as a prosecutor's role, or a defendant? And your opportunity to respond, Candidate Jordan, starts now. And this is the final question, and then you'll have your closing remarks.
Sure, thank you. Well, one of the things that I think I'm uniquely qualified again in this position as well. I actually teach at Southern University Law Center. I'm evidence and criminal procedure. And one of the things that I think is so important is if the young attorneys, the new attorneys, if we're not leaving a proper legacy in the young attorneys when they actually come up, then we're not doing our job, right? We are failing miserably. Right. One of the it's actually a couple of different attorneys that I'm actually happy and proud to say that I actually helped them out. And they were defense attorneys. That's Marcus DeLarge out of New Orleans. That's Brady Skinner, who was in New Orleans and in Baton Rouge. I fondly remember when I would see both of these individuals come into the courtroom, not necessarily knowing the ropes, not necessarily knowing what to say or what to do, offering whatever advice that I can, even in a role as an assistant DA, because at the end of the day, I know justice is what's important. I know justice is what matters. And if you can't adequately represent your clients well, then what good is that doing over here when the case ends up coming back and now it costs everybody because everybody has to redo this? It doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't help that person that's on trial. It doesn't help those victims and those witnesses. So understanding that and coming with a passion for actually making sure that things are done right, I think I'm, again, uniquely qualified. Now, how will I actually do that when I'm a judge? I look forward to having those actual sessions when we're actually having those status conferences after a case is done, or even in some cases before, when we're talking about some of these hypothetical situations, what it is that we can actually do better, what it is that you can actually do differently. Again, not talking about the merits of a case in a way to actually disproportionately affect the outcomes or predetermine those outcomes of a case. But if we're not actively trying to get better, right, and if we're allowing someone to continuously make a mockery of themselves or a mockery of the courtroom, then that's not helping anybody, be it in a civil matter or in a criminal matter. All it's doing is hurting all of us, because it's the same way like in law school, right? It's the same way like in law school. If you succeed, then I succeed, because if you shine that light, it helps shine the light on all of us. And if we have that mindset going in, and if we can actually help make everyone that much better, and if that's our actual goal, right? And we're not afraid to do it because we're not so worried about their light shining brighter than mine. Well, that light ain't got nothing to do with my candle. You understand what I'm saying? Then it actually helps us all out. It actually helps us all say, okay, well, what is special that they have going on down there in East Baton Rouge where they're actually making these remarkable lawyers? And that's my mindset, and that's my attitude.
Thank you, Candidate Jordan. Candidate Adebamaji, your time starts now.
Well, I'm going to use myself as the first example in this kind of situation. When I first started practicing, I started practicing with legal aid in Baton Rouge in 1991, 1992 when I met Judge Clark before she became a judge. And I think I finished out a docket for her when she became a judge. And I did most of her cases for her. I had the opportunity to be her first law clerk, but I turned it down because I like to practice. I found her the law clerk that she would have in Carlos Romanek. Now, being a new lawyer, when I first started in legal services, I went the first time it's baptism by fire in legal aid. You just got to go to court. My first judge I met was Judge Graffia, and I called him aside. I said, Judge, you know what? I said, yeah. I said, I can see that you kind of talk a little bit, and this is my first day in court. I said, please be gentle with me. That broke him down, and he let me sit down, because I always go to the courtroom. I would go and see how other lawyers handle their cases, even when I don't have a case, because I love to learn. And those kind of things kind of give me a situation. And he handled me all right. So in my practice, I've always played it forward. I can tell you this, I have talked to so many young lawyers. Believe me, honestly, I do it because I love to do it. I do it because I believe that, I believe that if you give a man to fish, he will eat it. But if you teach him how to fish, he will eat forever. So that's my policy. So when I see all those new young lawyers, I will advise them. They want it, that's fine. They don't want it, I will still do it as an elder statesman. Because I've gone through stuff and I know what it is to know how the court operates. Because if you do not know how the court operates, you're not only doing yourself injustice, you're killing your client. What is going to be your client? So it's best for me to be able to say, hey, guy, don't do that. If I see a lawyer, sometimes they're handling some cases, and for example, that person is a foreigner, and you're about to plead him to something, I always call them back, say, hey, man, look, do you know that guy may have immigration problem? Have you asked him what his immigration status is? That's experience. That's because I have that experience to know that there are other underlying factors concerning a case. It's just not going inside the courtroom alone that the case is. You must have this experience. You must have this knowledge. So for me, educating new lawyers or educating plaintiffs who want to represent themselves has never been something new for me, and I'm proud to do it. And even as a judge, I think it will be a beautiful thing, because that's part of what I like to do.
Candidate Adebamaji, if you can just scoot a little bit back from your screen, I hear a little feedback. And also, I would like to remind the candidates when the other candidate is speaking to mute yourself. But thank you, Candidate Adebamaji. That was a wonderful response. Both of you have wonderful responses to all of the questions. Now we're about to wrap up and enter into your opportunity to make any closing remarks. This is your opportunity to speak directly to the viewers. You're not limited in any scope. All we ask is that you keep your remarks to under 5 minutes. Candidate Anababaji, you went first with the opening remarks, so I think it's only fair to allow Candidate Jordan to go first with the closing remarks, and then Candidate Anababaji, you will follow. And afterwards, if you both can stay online so I can thank you as well as our viewers, and then we all could have a good night's rest until tomorrow. So let's proceed into our closing remarks. Candidate Jordan, your time starts now.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for being a wonderful moderator. Thank you to the NAACP Baton Rouge chapter. Thank you to the Louis A. Martinet Legal Society for actually putting on this event. I know it's been rescheduled. I know we had the technical difficulties, but I'm happy that we were able to do this because I feel like it was an actual fruitful discussion. And we really, for those viewers, I think they really got some good insight into what's actually going on in this, I guess how they would describe it, this down ballot election, right? Legacy. What is legacy, right? When we think about that, and you know, this is for Division D, a seat that is occupied by the one of the biggest legacies, the iconic Judge Janice Clark, right? We're not even in this position, but for what she did in the lawsuit, being the main plaintiff and actually moving the needle forward. I talk about it all the time in being that social engineer, that engineer of society, right? I know that when I'm elected, I'm not going to be Judge Janice Clark. I'm not even going to try it. Right. I'm going to be the best Will Jordan that I can be. When I understand that and think about what her legacy is, you know, it's what they say about you. It's how you made people feel afterwards. Right. After you've gone, how have you affected so many people? And when I said earlier in the question, I'm thinking about young Brady Skinner at the time, when I'm thinking about young Marcus DeLarge at the time, and I look at them now and I see Brady Skinner winning awards every time you turn around. When I look at young Marcus DeLarge in New Orleans, running for judge himself in New Orleans, and I see that, and not even to say that these guys were lost and confused then, but just to see that and to think that I may have had some type of influence on these attorneys' lives, that's the type of thing that I'm talking about. When on the campaign trail, when I see the individual that came into court and that had the charge for simple possession of heroin, right? A small amount of heroin, and I'm able to actually get this man some help. I'm able to actually work a deal where where this man doesn't have to go to jail, where he's able to get the rehab that he needs. And when I actually see him on the campaign trail and he sees me and gives me a big hug because he's able to say, Will, you helped change my life, right? That's legacy. When I'm walking down the street on 3rd Street and going to get something to eat, and then the woman comes out of the store and then she says, oh my God, you're the man who represented my family. Again, not representing, but as they were the victims when she lost her brother to a murder. And she's able to come out and tells me, you're the one that actually did this for my family. You got justice for my brother. And again, gives me a big hug and tell me about how her mom and her dad respected and appreciated everything I did, fighting in this case till 2:00 in the morning, waiting on the jury to come back. When I hear those things, this is what legacy is. When I'm actually going out and I'm seeing the friends that I'm actually playing basketball with, and I see guys that I actually see in court the week before, when I'm able to actually have a conversation with these guys, not about anything that's in court, not about any of these cases, but just on a human level, being able to have conversation and let people know that I see you as who you are. I see you as the man before me. It's those types of things. And then they see me as the man, right? It's those types of situations. It's that type of legacy that I've actually worked hard at, building my reputation and people understanding that Will is who Will is, forwards and backwards. He's a man of principle, which I know I am. I am a man that if I give you my word, then that is what it is. It's these things. It's that legacy that I am working on building, because I know I'm not there yet. I'm still young in this. I'm still moving forward. But I also know that there's an extreme responsibility that comes with the position of authority and power that I do have. I understand that power is not something that you take. It is actually given by the people. And I want the people to understand that this role, this position that you are electing me to, I do not take it lightly. I understand the great responsibility that comes with it. I understand what it means to actually be up there and represent the people of where I'm from. When I look at my wife's family, when I look at everybody that's in the bottom, when I look at everybody that's in Scotlandville, and I say my wife's family, that's my family, right? When I understand where we all come from, and I have so many people that are actually looking to me, just like those segregation busters back in the day. My mother, who actually integrated Tallulah High School back in the day. When I look at the same pressure or the eyes of justice that were on them, I see the same eyes on me, knowing that I must do the job well. I don't represent just myself, Will Jordan. I represent it's the people around me and behind me. And I take pride in that. And I want everybody to know that if you have voted already, I appreciate your vote. And when you go out and vote on November 3rd and you vote for Will Jordan, number 74 on your ballot, you are voting for the best choice for our community and the absolute best choice for Division D. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Jordan. Candidate Adebamaji, your under 5 minutes begins now. Take as much time as you need, but please do not exceed 5 minutes, and don't forget to unmute yourself.
Okay. Oh, thank you you did it. You unmuted me. First of all, though, let me give God the glory and the adoration, because without him, I wouldn't be where I am today. If it wasn't for him, my enemies would have consumed me a long time ago. But he's been divine. He's been faithful, and he's told me to keep on going. Hey, when God is with you, nobody can stand against you. That's one thing I want you to understand first. And then, secondly, let me thank you, Ms. Johnson. Let me thank the Louis Martinet for inviting me. And also let me thank the NAACP for putting up this wonderful event. It allows you all to know us and to meet us. I just don't want to talk and attack anybody else, but what I want to say is that maybe I need to set a couple of things straight, which some people may not have which most people don't know. Judge Clark did leave a legacy, but I was part of that legacy that she left in 1992 when I met Judge Clark and I became part of her, and she was becoming a judge. I worked with her. I worked with her to get to becoming a judge. I worked with her to clearing all her dockets that she hasn't finished. Look, through that, I met some wonderful friends. I met Ambassador Little Barrow, may her soul rest in peace, and some other good people through that course. I did all those her docket without any charges because, hey, she was a living legend. She was so impressed. She wanted me to be her law clerk, but I refused to because I wanted to practice law. She gave me the task to find her a law clerk, and I found her Carlos Romanek. And go ask people how many years Carlos Romanek stayed with Judge Clark. But hey, every time she has anybody that needs help in her courtroom, Dele Adebamiji, I represent him. Why? Let me borrow Gail McKay's word. He said, Dele is a man with a legal aid heart. Yes, I have a legal aid heart because that's where I started practicing law. Those are my people. I tend to gravitate towards people who I believe do not have the resources to go into the courtroom. I tend to gravitate people who I think are somehow or one way disadvantaged because of money or because of their status. Don't forget, I'm a foreigner. I was born in Nigeria. So I came here. So I know what it is. If I have listened to what people have told me with accent, you can't practice law. Oh, please save me that. With the accent, I've practiced law successfully. I'm not trying to brag. In federal court, in state court, and in city court. I've done it. Every jury I have tried, I have put in my best. And my clients know. It gladdens my heart when my client come to me and thanks me. Most of my clients think I can do wonders. They think I can perform miracles. But I have to let them know that it's not so. It's not so. You just have to trust in God and you have to be good. I take conflict cases in juvenile court for 28 years without charging anybody. It was a free service. And I do it because I love to contribute to the community. I like to give back to the community. I've been in this community for almost 40 years. So I know the pulse of this community. Not only do I represent children for free in juvenile court as a counsel, I've done a lot of pro bono cases for the Public Defender's Office. I used to be a member of the board for the East Baton Rouge Parish Public Defender's Office. So yes, Gail McKay was right. I have a heart of legal aid. And it's not because I'm not a good lawyer. Those who knows me can attest to my my efficacy when I come into the courtroom. Communication. I've done cases where people have been evicted from the housing authority in the 90s, and I filed a suit against the housing authority, a class action suit in federal court. We prevailed on that issue. I also have represented in the case of Ayo versus Don. If you go look at it, it's a 2019 class action case. I resolved that case favorably for the defendants. Look, if I stay here, continue to tell you all those things I've resolved, it will take us a long time. But I came into this community. I have 4 girls, like I've said, and they've all graduated from college. It's not my doing; it's God's doing. God gave me that ability, and God sanctioned it. So, what I do to young lawyers when I see them, most of them know that I will advise them. Not only do I advise them about law, I also advise them about life. Why do I advise them about life? Because I've been through it. When I have my clients, I don't treat my clients as clients. If I'm older than you show them Skippy, I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to make you do things. But today they come back and they say, thank you. That gladdens my heart. I'm not going to tell you that, I'm the best person to be voted for as the judge in Division D. But one thing I can guarantee you, one thing I can tell you, I've always served this community. I will continue to serve this community. But I think right now, today, I'm the best candidate you can vote for in Division D. Why? I don't hide nothing. I have nothing to hide. Because these are the people I represent. I can knock on their doors. I can sit down, eat with them, and drink with them. I can go into their neighborhood. Why? Because I know I have the ability and I know I will be welcomed in their homes. So if you want to vote and you want the best candidate for this judgeship, you have no option but to vote for number 72 as the best judge for Division D in this case. Thank you.
And thank you, candidate Adebamaji. Before I thank both of you for this, I would like to remind our viewers, as well as our candidates, that tomorrow we have a similar type of forum at 6 p.m. with candidate and judge-elect Richard Anderson and Christopher Dassall, followed by the 7 p.m. or immediately following that, we have the 7 p.m. slot of candidate Ebony Johnson, Quintillis Lawrence, and Joel Porter. So I encourage all of our viewers, as well as our candidates, to tune in tomorrow for those segments in a similar type of forum. Now, I would like to thank both of the candidates. You both did so well. It was such a pleasure. Thank you for your patience as we worked through our technical difficulties that were completely out of our control. Thank you so much. On a personal note, you both are my colleagues and my friends, and I've worked with you both for a very long time, and I could not say how proud I am that one of you, it's inevitable, one of you will be our new judge, and I am so proud, and you both have run very clean and very effective campaigns, so thank you, and our parish will be better with one of you on the bench. I would also like to thank Louis A. Martinet Legal Society, Greater Baton Rouge Chapter, as well as the NAACP Greater Baton Rouge Chapter. And also thank you to our technical support. On behalf of our chapter president, Michael Victorian, who I am standing in the stead for, I would like to thank you all for tuning in. Tune in tomorrow. And if you don't do anything else, if you have not done it already, please go out and vote. And really briefly, at the same time, if you can, candidates, remind everyone what your district is. Just jump on in.
All right. Since I got the mute clicked off first, we're all the way up to the north. We're talking about Blunt Road. So we're talking about Crestworth. We're talking about the avenues. We're coming all the way down through Scotlandville. We're talking about Banks. We're talking about Rosenwald. We're talking about all those neighborhoods there. We're coming all the way down Dixie. We're talking about CC Lockdown. We're talking about that whole area, right? We also go across Airline for a segment of the of neighborhoods where we're talking about the entirety of the Glen Oaks and that whole pocket between Greenwell Street. That's the southern border to that northern border being Mickens Road and where they meet over there down at Jewel. We come back. We also get Zion City. I want to say, and all through up in 4th Street. Coming back down into the south of the district. So we come back on the other side of Airline Highway. So don't forget about Brookstown either. We got Fairfields. We've got Eden Park. We've got everywhere in between Gus Young, going all the way into North Acadian, coming down in some parts of the Garden District, going all the way over into the South Baton Rouge, ending over there by LSU as well, Spanish Town and Beauregard Town. Did I miss anything? I don't think I did.
Did you miss anything, candidate at Obama G?
All right.
Oh, he's gone. Oh,
No,
oh wait,
okay, he's
there you
coming.
go.
There he is.
There you go.
He did a good job. He studies his geography good.
Okay, and I know both of you have been out there. I've seen both of you. I've heard from other individuals that y'all have been out there, and I look forward to seeing both of you keep on hitting the streets, and especially on election day. Our thoughts and prayers will be with both of you. We thank you very, very much. I'll see y'all soon, and continue the good work. Bye-bye. We're gone.